A woman was on her phone, walking alone down a dirt path surrounded by trees on the side of the road. It was Halloween night, and she was looking to get home before kids began knocking on her door. She looked up from her phone. A cool chill crawled up her spine as autumn-colored leaves blew past her. She continued her way as the sun began to set and the blue and orange sky faded into dark blue. She jumped as she heard an echoey high-pitched honk behind her. She spun, looking behind, thinking it was a car or kids out just to mess with her. She scoffed to see only the dark, shadowy path under the tall, hovering trees where she came from. "Come on out, you morons, I know you're out there," she called out. It seemed quite odd to think kids would be out in the middle of nowhere trying to spook her. Kids were usually like that, though. She began walking towards the noise. Slowing down and squinting her eyes, she noticed a tall white and black figure doing as told, silently, walking out from the shadows. "Hey, I'm talking to you. What do you want?" She paused, as whoever it was wasn't moving, just standing there, motionless. "Hey, buddy, you alright? Do you need help?" She squinted her eyes again to see it was holding something. Taking that as a cue, she began walking backwards, not taking her eyes off the figure until she disappeared over the hill, then immediately started charging down once it wasn't seen anymore. Braving a look back, her heart pounded in her chest, fearing with thoughts of it following her. She then tripped on a tree root sticking out of the ground and tumbled, scraping and burning the skin from both of her knees on the road. "Honk!" She quickly faced the noise and yelled as the figure was now standing across the road from her, smiling cockily with its arm behind its back. Holding both her legs, she watched as it pointed and began silently laughing at her. "What do you want from me?" she cried, about to get up when she hesitated. The figure stopped and began walking slowly towards her, presenting what it was holding behind its back. Seeing the weapon, she screamed, backing away in fear towards the forest, and seeing the figure clench, raising its arm, causing her to scream again and kick it out of its hand. The figure trembled back, watching in awe as the knife flew over its head, making an echoey clang as it hit the road. He quickly faced her, her eyes widened, and she struggled and screamed, kicking her legs as it bent over and grasped her by the neck, causing her to kick and hit with all her might. In a way that seemed impossible, it began to lift her with one arm, grinning up at her before rushing towards a tree, hitting her back against it, impaling her on a branch. The woman shouted, blood erupting from her mouth, landing on her attacker's face. Her wide, paralyzed eyes glaring into his as the figure stepped back in amusement before turning and retrieving the weapon from the road. He faced back towards her as she pleaded and shook her head as he stood over her. With now showing the look of deep hatred, it rose the knife before quickly jabbing into the side of her neck. Her eyes widened and more blood flowed from her mouth. Art glared at her, noticing her attempting to fight back by using her arms. Her eyes rolled from the back of her head as she gagged, gurgled, and gasped for air. She grabbed hold and pressed down on his arm as he slowly and agonizingly carved from ear to ear. She constantly gurgled as he pushed her head back, exposing the blood gushing through the gashed muscles of her neck. Pressing his finger down into her neck, he wrote his signature on her forehead before disappearing into the night.